Hello guys! Today we are going to talk about the simple present tense. Simple present has different uses. First, we can use it to talk about routines and habits. For example, he always takes the bus at 6 a.m. For this use, you can think about your routine. What do you do every day? Second, you can use it for repeated actions or events. My bus drives to Monaco every summer. So this means that every single year, in every summer, my bus drives to this place. Third, you can use it for general truths, facts, or things that always happen. For example, people describe me as a people person. The group leader is Peruvian. And then you can use it for definitions. Leadership is the position or function of a leader, a person who guides or directs a group. Okay? Then you can say, or we can use, simple present for verbs that describe mental states, such as think, know, hope, see, understand, and want. We have two examples here. Bono hopes to end world hunger, and no one wants to work for someone who is unfriendly. Now let's go to the structure of affirmative statements. I need you to pay a lot of attention to the subjects of the sentences, okay? Something important is that we are going to have this structure: subject, verb, and complement with specific rules. So let's go. Let's go to the first example. I work in a hospital. In this case, we use the subject first and then we use the verb in simple form because we are talking about the subject I. In the second, you work in a hospital, we use exactly the same structure. First the subject, then the verb in simple form, and a complement. Now, if you are wondering what that S means, it means that it's singular. You will see later that you has a singular form and a plural form. Now let's see the next examples. We are going to have 3 sets of examples that have a verb in a different color. Let's pay attention to the difference with the verbs that are in red, okay? It says, Luis works in a hospital. He works in a hospital. Karina works in a hospital. She works in a hospital. The computer works well. It works well. Okay? Do you see the difference with the blue verbs and the red verbs? Yes, exactly. So when we have the subjects he, she, and it, we are going to add an S to the verb. So it's not he work, it's he works. But when we have subjects as I, you, we, and they, we use the simple form of the verb. Okay, we covered the singular section. Let's go to the plurals. All of these ones are going to use the verb in the simple form. So Joseph and I, which is the same as we, work in a hospital. You work in a hospital, this time in a plural form. Maybe you will ask, how do you know if it is singular or plural? Well guys, you have to pay attention to the context. Let's see the next one. Luis and Karen work in a hospital. Luis and Karen is they work in a hospital. Okay, let's continue. Okay, now let's go over the spelling of verbs ending in S and ES. I need you to pay attention to these rules closely, as they are going to be very useful all your life, okay? These are for verbs in the third person and for plural nouns. So it's not exclusive to verbs. Let's go over these rules. So number 1, for most third person singular verbs and plural nouns, add s to the base form of this verb. For example, swim becomes swims. Live becomes lives. Number 2, if the base form ends with the letters S, Z, SH, CH, or X, add ES. For example, miss becomes misses, teach, teaches, wash, washes. Number 3, if the base form ends with a consonant plus Y, change Y to I and add ES. Now, we have these examples: try, tries, study, studies. Notice that in both of them, before the Y we have a consonant. In try is R. In study is D. Now pay attention to the parentheses because this is not the same as vowel plus Y. For example, obey becomes obeys. Why? Because before the Y we have a vowel, in this case E. Number 4, if the base form ends with a consonant plus O, add S or ES. Some words take S, some words take ES, and some of them take both S and ES. For example, solo becomes solus. Do becomes does. Go becomes goes. Zero becomes cirrus or cirrus. If you see, the spelling is different because it incorporates two. The other ones only incorporate one. Radio, for example, which is a vowel plus O, becomes radius. Now, let's go over simple present negative statements. For the subjects I, you, we, and they, we are going to use first the subject, then do not or don't if you want the contracted form, and the verb in simple form, plus a complement if necessary. Now, for he, she, and it, we are going to use first the subject, then does not or doesn't if you want the contracted form, the verb in simple present, simple form, and a complement when necessary. Let's see the examples. I do not work in a hospital. I don't work in a hospital. You do not work in a hospital. You don't work in a hospital. Luis does not work in a hospital. He doesn't work in a hospital. Karina does not work in a hospital. She doesn't work in a hospital. The machine does not work. It doesn't work. Tom and I do not work in a hospital. We don't work in a hospital. You do not work in a hospital. You don't work in a hospital. Luis and Karen do not work in a hospital. They don't work in a hospital. Now, let's go over the simple present with some special verbs. The first verb that we are going to cover is have. Okay? Why is it different? Why is it special? Because it has a change in the third person that is different to all the other verbs. For example, we have I have leadership, you have leadership, but Luis has leadership. He has leadership. Karina has leadership. She has leadership. The computer has a virus. It has a virus. Joseph and I have leadership. We have leadership. You have leadership. Luis and Karen have leadership and they have leadership. In other words, I, you, we, and they use the verb have. He, she, it use the verb has. For the negative forms, it's exactly the same rule that all the other verbs follow. I don't have time, you don't have time, Luis doesn't have time, he doesn't have time, Karina doesn't have time, she doesn't have time, the computer doesn't have a virus, it doesn't have a virus. Joseph and I don't have time, we don't have time, you don't have time, Luis and Karen don't have time, they don't have time. Now, the next verb that we are going to study is the verb to be in affirmative statements. Every subject has a different form of the verb to be, so let's pay attention. I am intelligent, I'm intelligent. You are a leader, you're a leader. Luis is honest, he's honest. Karina is a student, she's a student. Our university is in San Pedro, it's in San Pedro. Joseph and I are talented, we're talented. You are students, you're students. Luis and Karen are engineers, they're engineers. Okay, so pay attention to all the forms because we have first the full form and then we have the contracted form. Okay, when do we use the full form? When do we use the contracted form? In writing, always use the full form, and in formal situations. In speaking and informal situations, you can use the contracted form. So let's continue. These are the negative statements for the verb to be. I am not a musician. I'm not a musician. You are not a student. You're not student. You aren't a student. Okay? As you see, there are 3 different forms for this verb to be used in the negative form. And it happens with all the other subjects. So take notes and pay attention to the differences. And remember, if it is a formal situation, do not use the contracted forms. Let's go with Luis. Luis is not arrogant. He's not arrogant. He isn't arrogant. Karina is not a student. She's not a student. She isn't a student. Our university is not in Guanacaste. It's not in Guanacaste. It isn't in Guanacaste. Joseph and I are not shy. We're not shy. We aren't shy. You are not students. You're not students. You aren't students. Luis and Karen are not engineers. They're not engineers. They aren't engineers.